Today we'll be sitting down with Jeff, the CEO of Homefront Brands and one of Lucid Bots' newest partners. We'll be talking about business, life, franchising, and everything in between. Jeff, we're really excited to be sitting down with you today, and you've got an incredibly impressive resume, but I don't want to start at the end. I want to start at the beginning. Tell me how you originally got into the world of business and entrepreneurship.
Well, Andrew, first of all, thank you. Very excited to be here today and very excited about our partnership with Lucid Bots. I sometimes like to say that entrepreneurs are often screwed into existence.
Yes.
And, it's either you have this great idea and you're really passionate about it, or you have to eat one of the two. And for me, it was the latter.
Yeah.
I went to 3 colleges. My third one was Appalachian State University. And I got a really good 4-year degree in 5.5 years of college. So I have, 6, I have CPR 1, 2, 3, and 4. I got first aid 1 through 4, Olympic weightlifting. So if anybody needs any help while we're here, I'm the guy. But ultimately, when I got to App, I got serious about school, and I ended up with graduating with honors in marketing and business. And I was on a football scholarship, but I wanted to stay over the summer. And when I grew up in Chicago, I had worked all the trades. I had moving and storage, construction, flat work concrete. And one of the summers I worked for a painting contractor. And in Boone, North Carolina, it's lovely, but there's really no industry there. So it's all food service. And I really couldn't live on that. So I talked my roommate into starting a painting business. And at the end of the first summer, we met the property managers that manage student housing. And they said, hey, we've got hundreds of apartments that need to be painted every year when the students move in and out. We have a hard time getting it done. Do you think you could help us? And I said, I think we can do that. So we went to the athletes that were there taking classes over the summer. Mm-hmm. Basketball players can cut in ceilings in an apartment without ladders. Wrestlers on the base moldings. Football players roll in the walls. And we would paint 15 to 20 apartments in a day. Wow. And that was really my first business that we built, and had to pay taxes and do payroll and all of that. And so I did that while I was playing football at App State. And then when I graduated, one of our ex-painters called me and said, hey, this hurricane has just hit South Florida. It was Hurricane Andrew. It was 1992. As a matter of fact, we're here. I know this is evergreen content, but we're in about August 29th here, and it was August 24th, 1992. So my partner and I, my business partner and I went down there, and we cut our teeth in the insurance restoration business. I came back up to Central Florida 2 years later and started my own business with partners, moved back up to the Carolinas in 95. And then in 2004, I bought out my last partner. We made an effort to franchise that business. We got some consultants in, and we bought semi-trucks and tractor trailers. We had a little business plan they gave us, and half of it was to expand our direct business. At that point in time, we were a government contractor. We were a disaster restoration contractor. We were working in the Caribbean and Hawaii and all over the country. VA hospitals, military bases, schools, universities, all that kind of stuff, in addition to residential stuff in local markets. And so we prepared, we really geared up, and then Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast in 2005. So I went down there, started that, and then I was on my way back, and I was driving through Atlanta in the middle of the night because I was trying to get home because I was missing my son's first football season. Mm-hmm. And when I grew up, I didn't go to 3 colleges because the competition for my GPA was so high. I wasn't. And history was kind of repeating itself. I was never home, so I decided in the middle of the night that I was going to sell all of our offices in the Southeast under a franchise model and commit to that model. So in 2006, 7, and 8, I sold Orlando, I sold Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina, Columbia, and Charlotte. And then we launched our franchise business to the market in 2009, and we finished in 2019. I sold the business with 240 locations in 37 states. And that was that. And so that was the 24 years and 11 months of how I got started.
Wow. I was going to say, they often say, right, like overnight success happens in 24 years and 11 months is the exact date.
Yeah.
I'd love to go back to that very early moment, right? You were a student athlete in college. What business background did you have, if anything, and what gave you the courage to take that first step? And The reason why I ask is your story, especially now with Homefront, empowering these entrepreneurs to really build great businesses. It's inspiring, but I often find that moment of catalyst for the entrepreneur when they first get started, it's so critical. So like, what was your mindset at that time? What gave you the courage to get started?
Well, similar to AI, right? AI it feels like intelligence, but it's really just a compilation of things that it can find and things that it's been exposed to. And I find that people too, you can only make a decision from a subset of things you've been exposed to. Mm-hmm. So my dad was an engineer, and during my middle school and high school, he'd started his own business. And I watched him work, 7 days a week, working on Saturdays and Sundays, him and a partner and a small staff, trying to build this engineering company and get it off the ground. So for me, I had this exposure to starting your own business and kind of making your own way. It wasn't a terribly successful business, but it was a business nonetheless. And then for whatever reason, I always was trying to find a way to make money growing up. So I was, whatever I could do, whether it be babysitting, cutting grass, I needed money. So I was pretty scrappy around that. And then when I was working with all these contractors and things like that, for whatever reason, I was constantly thinking about the business side of it. So I didn't really have any formal business training, but I will tell you, I was a voracious reader. So things like somehow I got a subscription to Inc. magazine, and I would just read I still read. And I think that was a big part of, maintaining curiosity. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of it is, if you have nothing to lose, then you have everything to gain. Mm-hmm. So the fact that I showed up at App State University with 5 T-shirts in a trash bag, 2 of them had profanity on it because they were free. Yeah. I was in a 1972 Buick LeSabre. It was a one-way trip. I parked it in student parking. I never went back to get it. It's like, what do I possibly have to lose? And I still feel that way.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, such an inspiring story.
I wish it was true.
Segueing that into the guidance that you give new franchisees coming into your business, what tools do you use to empower these up and coming entrepreneurs to be successful?
We care a great deal about franchise owners. In a franchise system, if you do it the right way, number one, you have to take the long view of it, because it just takes time when you take somebody out of corporate America. And we have a lot of franchise owners that are family office people, or they're looking to add a really great business to their portfolio of assets. Businesses are a high-class asset, especially now. Real estate's ridiculously high. I don't know how you're going to get a return on a $400,000 starter home. Stock market's high. If you're in NVIDIA, God bless you. But you never know where that's going to go. So businesses are increasingly a high-class asset for people. And as people transition out of corporate America, or they add another business to their portfolio, they need different things. Mm-hmm. But franchising is a leverage play. So you're talking about building brand equity in the marketplace, shared customer acquisition, a shared technology stack, shared learning management system, and then really qualified people that have been in the business for a long time. We're an adult education company. We're a community building company. I mean, franchising is a game of influence. So you've got to be very patient. One of our values is service, or servant's heart, because at the end of the day, people are going to come from all these different backgrounds, but there's really one best way to run the business. And the more experienced people are, they'll try to make that business to fit their background and the things that they're comfortable with. So, and what I talk about in the first 2 hours of our training is nobody has everything. Mm-hmm. You might be a great salesperson, but you could use some help in the finance, or you struggle with conflict. And business owners, especially, I know this is a startup here one day, and you have to be scrappy and you have to get right to it, and you don't have time for latency. Mm-hmm. Latency of decisions, latency of you don't have time to sit a meeting, to talk about a meeting. You just got to do matters. It. Yeah. Speed matters. Speed from the time that there's an awareness that that something needs to happen, to the time an action is taken or a conversation is had, it needs to be instantaneous. Mm-hmm. So all these business owners need something, and they need some awareness. They need to leave something behind, and they need to add a few different skill sets. So, we're very in tune to individual support of these people, but also getting everybody onto these shared services and taking full advantage of the data. And we're radically transparent. So they walk in the door and they get dashboards not only to their business, but to every other franchise that's in the system in that brand. Closing percentages, cost per lead, average linear foot per this, that, or the other thing. So they can look at a live dashboard like a doctor looks at a chart and diagnose their business versus what it could be.
I think that's huge. From what I've heard from people, especially looking to start a business, it's uncharted territory. I think it's huge that not only do you give them a path to success, but also you give them the feeling that they're not left on an island. So having that, dashboard, I think that's an awesome idea.
Yeah. I always say, like, with early entrepreneurs, or especially first-time entrepreneurs, they spend a lot of time searching in these dark corners where they don't necessarily need to be searching. And I think when you're handed more of a refined playbook, it's like a head start. It's a springboard to help you really focus on growing your business instead of just, how do I kind of learn to crawl?
Yeah.
So for our listeners that are just getting to know you, I'd like to zoom out. Can you tell us about Homefront and your portfolio of brands and what you guys really focus on?
Sure. So after I sold my main franchise, which was a restoration remediation business, knocked around for 2 or 3 years, consulting, investing, advising, getting involved in lots of different things. Somehow I didn't get the call on this deal, but maybe next round. And then after doing all of that and kind of taking a step back and saying, I think I'd like to operate again, but we want to build something significant and something material. We want to do it responsibly. And there's 72 different categories of franchises, everything from hotels to food to pets to all kinds of categories and subcategories. Property services, we believe, is the most durable. There's going to be 100 million more people in this country by 2050, minimum. Minimum. There's already a housing shortage in many markets where people want to live. Anytime somebody moves out of a house or into a house, there's work that needs to get done. Then you're going to need the schools and the retail and the hospitals and the offices and everything that comes with that. So now I like to say you'll never find a Homefront brand nestled comfortably between a Blockbuster and a Curves because there's no obsolescence. So if you want to build something for you and you want to say, I don't want to get into this business where we're making cookies or it's some sort of a faddish fitness workout, that there just might not be a market for it in 10 years. I mean, there will always be a market for it, so it's safe.
Good insight.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be in property services. That's where our experience that's where we know that we can look franchisees in the eye and say, if you do your job, if we do our job too, if we collaborate and we work together, we resolve conflicts in a healthy manner, which is probably like when people ask me, what makes a great franchise? It's okay. What a franchisee? It's nice if they're capitalized because we don't want them to cut back if they run out of money, they stop marketing, and then that starts a spiral that you have to reverse. We like people to have sales ability because there's no outcome without income. Somebody's got to sell something before anything starts. Amen. But business is full contact, and if you're fighting with everybody, then you're probably the problem. Because you've got franchise neighbors, you've got vendors, you've got customers, you've got the home office. So people that can be objective and look at situations with maturity and resolve those conflicts quickly, like that's a big deal for us and kind of what we're looking for. And so our approach to Homefront Brands was that we wanted to do something where it would make sense for us to invest in the technology. It would make sense for us to invest in the C-suite. It would make sense for us to invest in all the learning management systems ahead of revenue. So we had to have an opportunity that was big enough to attract people that knew what they were doing. So we started with 5 brands all at once. And, the largest one had 12 franchise locations. The smallest one had none and several had a couple. But we created a dream that was big enough for lots of people's dreams to fit inside of it. And it was expensive, but at the end of the day, not that much more expensive than people might pay for single brand. I mean, because we did it with Velocity. Sure, we spilled some milk here and there, and everything didn't work perfect, and it still doesn't. So we went out and we specifically look for brands that have some characteristics to them. Number one, there needs to be demonstrated proof that there can be a certain revenue size within a reasonable geography, because we wanted to attract a smaller number of large, more capable, more well-financed, more well-funded franchisees. So they needed to be, there's lots of great little franchises out there where you can, repair upholstery in cars, and the whole business does $120,000 a year, and somebody's doing it and they make 90, and it's great business, but that's not our owner. Our owner wants to build a business that's significant, and believe that if they take their skill and their capital and they apply their energy to it, that with one or more of our brands, we have some people that are multi-brand owners in our system, that they can build something significant. So average unit volume mattered. We like a residential commercial mix. We like there to be products in it, if at all possible, because there's certain opportunities that are created when you have a product-based franchise. We needed to understand who the customer was, and that maybe in fulfilling those customers, there was some fragmentation in the industry that we could bring order to. And, so we knew that if we, and not all of our brands are like this, but we do have several, and we're just launching a 6th brand. And I think this would be the 3rd one that really fits in that category, that we can be either number 1 or number 2 in the space nationally. And so they're not all there. I mean, I guess we could say any of them could be number 1 or number 2, but there's definitely 3 of our brands that are, either first to market or a fast follower to a first to market, and we're competing very well.
One of the things you said that really stood out was the durability of the property space.
Sure.
Right? It's something we talk about all the time. Like in the world of business, market timing matters so much. So finding these industries that are durable, what we talk about with our core product, the Sherpa, is we're building more and more buildings, and those buildings are getting larger and larger and harder to maintain. Right? That's the only direction we're going, is we're going to build more buildings that keep getting bigger.
I think that's a great point. In talking with a lot of our customers, one of the questions I like to ask is, or let me change that. One of the questions I always get asked is, how does the Sherpa clean windows? And it's very challenging for a business owner to step outside that comfort zone. So I like to always ask the question, well, how do you do it now? And usually it's, I've got a mop and squeegee or water-fed pole. And then I usually like to ask, well, how do you clean the buildings that are higher than your water-fed poles and don't have rappel points? Yeah. And then it's like that, oh crap moment. I didn't think about that. And it's enjoyable for me because it's like a whole new world. So I say all that to say, how do you feel as though innovation and technology is going to help advance Homefront Brands?
Well, we're using the bot in our Window Hero business. And we're also looking to use it in our business that we're launching next month. I think it's a perfect fit for that as well. So we've got to get that incorporated into that. And we'll be launching the first new franchisees. There's three franchisees. We'll be launching the first ones in February, March. So we've got a little time to get that implemented. But we'll start awarding those franchises in the 4th quarter this year. And the bot is going to be in there. And I think it's going to be very fast moving. So as we were evaluating this partnership, and we're going through the meetings, and we've got our franchisees, a little committee coming in, meeting with you guys, watching the bot work, and I'm hearing about it. And then I go to one of our franchise sales conferences, and we have our development director is pitching to all the consultants and talking about Window Hero, and then also that we're adding in this aspect of our business, which is going to help us do this. Nobody was talking about what I thought was the most interesting or the most compelling part of this whole thing. And it's probably because I was a service business owner. It's the change that it's going to make to our staffing model. For every one person that you can get to pressure wash above their head all day for 8 hours and stand on a ladder and do it, there's 1,000 people that will fly this drone all day, every day. And it does it faster, and it does it more cost effectively. And it creates scope, and reduces setup time and reduces risk, all of those things. But for okay, that's great. But what's going to be the thing that a small business owner needs to understand? man, my staffing is just got a lot easier, and I can do more with less, and it's a different kind of employee. We had retired Brigadier General Tony Tata on our podcast, and he was talking a lot about the military, and we're passionate about that, and that we're about 60% of where we need to be in our volunteer forces. Patriotism is down under 30% from above 70%, and less people are choosing the military as an option, even though it's got all these benefits in college and everything, that good training and all that goes with it. But he said, our military service is changing, because if you're going to be sitting in Maryland somewhere, flying a drone that's in the Middle East, you don't need to be able to do 100 pull-ups. So the physical standards that that they would want, everybody needs to be able to run across the fight and all that kind of stuff. He says, they're making, he says, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but they, because of the change of the workforce and the way that our military deploys and the way that it engages, we need people with different skill sets, and some of the physical stuff doesn't matter nearly as much anymore as other things. So, and I think it's the same thing here. So I'd stand in the back of the room, and as presentations are going on or conversations are being had, I try not to, overstep my bounds, but I keep edging up towards the front, and then we're about to finish. And I said, one more thing, the staffing model. Don't forget about the staffing model. Yeah. So I think that's how this is going to make the biggest impact for us, and probably demonstrate how important it is to our team to be agile, to be innovative, to take some chances. So whether it's AI technology in our tech stack, or whether it's tools like this out in the field, I think it's really important for us to keep our eyes open. Our industry, such as it is tends to get set in its ways. Yeah. Home services. It's the same people that have been doing it, and they don't want to change, after 30 years. But so.
Well, one of my favorite quotes is, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better through change. And I think that's very applicable to business, right? Like the world of business is moving so fast these days, and the rate of innovation just keeps increasing and accelerating. And I think that the way businesses set themselves up to receive that change and adapt to it is really what dictates their success. And we just look to the world of science, right? Like evolution would show us, in order for an organism to survive, it's got to learn and adapt faster than the rate of the world changing around it. And the same is true for businesses. If you're not thinking, how is the world changing around me, and how am I going to adapt my business to succeed in this new era of business, you're likely going to be playing catch up. So it's exciting to be at the forefront of that innovation.
Are there any success stories that come to your mind that you can share of some of your franchisees?
Wow. Lots and lots and lots of them. Boy, franchisee success story. There is a family, I like to see when people getting to a business really changes their life. Yeah. So we had a family in my prior business that was a highly degreed bunch of engineers, and they owned manufacturing facilities in Venezuela. And as Venezuela changed, there was inflation, the middle class was shrinking, and they started really losing all of their assets. So through an E2 visa process, they were able to use an E2 visa and buy 3 territories of Advanaclean in South Florida. And they were able to transition their entire family over there. They were incredible operators, of course. They were very detailed. They had great sales ability, very smart, just made quick work of the business. And some 3 to 4 years later, they had one of the more profitable businesses in the system. They sold it for a handsome sum, and they used that. By this time, they had been able to bring their entire family over, anybody who wanted to come. And then they invested in an import-export business. And, franchising is transitional. Everybody has a problem to solve. Yeah. Okay, so it could be college education for your kids. It could be retirement. It could be, I want a job that I can't get fired from again. Yeah. It could be, it could be I want to have a little more flexibility in my schedule. I want to come off the road. for what I do, I have to travel at 70% of the time, and I don't want to do that anymore, which is probably one of my reasons for moving to the franchise model so aggressively. And, so whatever that is, all of those opportunities can be addressed through business ownership. And a franchise is a safer way to do it. It's, speed to first dollar. The risk is much lower because you're really investing a relatively small amount of money to get into a business. And then day one, you have a full set of fully developed tools, marketing, brand, all of that. So it's kind of easy in, speed to dollar. And then if you grow it like this family I talked about did, you can grow it and end up with a big bag of money like you never had before. And then you can take that and take what you learned in that experience of, putting those training wheels on as a business owner and then taking them off and riding the bike. And now you've got a bag of money, so you can take what you've learned and you can do to your next thing. So it's transitional for people in corporate America, but it's also transformational for so many people that succeed. And I always tell people, I said, look, you can get big eyes and think about all of this stuff going on out there, but you win the next opportunity by succeeding in the one that you're in.
Yeah.
Focus on this, grow this. If you hate it, if it's not big enough for you or whatever, the great thing about a franchise is we have a pipeline of people that want your market and your business, and we can always find a way to get you out and get you on to your next thing. So it's really, really good, and it just, everyone has to take accountability for what needs to get done for it to work.
Mm-hmm. So Jeff, if I'm listening to this podcast and I'm interested in robots,
I hope you are.
I'm interested in entrepreneurship, but I'm just not sure how to get started or what I should do next. Like, how would you recommend they proceed? Like, what's the best way to engage with you, engage with your team, and really get started?
Yeah, so real easy. You can go to homefrontbrands.com, just see our brands there, fill out a form, and one of our people will call you incessantly until you pick up, and with a text you call you and all of that, which is a great way to do it. You can also, we have a ton of content online on our YouTube channel. So if you go to On the Homefront with Jeff Dudan, we have a pretty good podcast. We got up to number 13 on Apple for entrepreneurship last week. So we just keep climbing. Several million downloads, 4 million downloads across everything already. We're several million downloads. So a lot of good content on there about whatever, but you can also see some of our heroes on the home front. So a day in the life of one of our a 30-minute television show showing what our franchise owners do in our window hero business or our top rail fence business or whatever it is. You can find those on the YouTube channel, or you can get our podcast on Apple or Spotify. I wrote a book called when I sold. I've written 2 books. One thing I did when I came off the road is I coached over 30 seasons of my kids' sports. Mm-hmm. And at the end of that, I wrote a book called Hey Coach about everything that I learned, coaching a group of kids for 3 to 4 months to play fast, loose, and happy and for each other. It was good. So when I come to the end of something and I'm like, well, I just don't want this to die with me, I'll try to put it in a book. And and literally there's dozens of copies of that in print. Mm-hmm. They're all in my shelf, but there are dozens of copies in print. But then I also, when I sold Advanticlean, I wrote a book called Discernment, which is the business athlete's regimen for a great life through better decisions. Mm-hmm. And I have heard it really seems to resonate with people like 18 to 30. Mm-hmm. People that are looking at starting their first business or have their first business. And because it's all really like fundamentals, how to lay down the foundation for good decision making in and around business, how to get a set of values in place, why you do it, just really, I've heard it's people, that seems to be where it resonates with. So if you're thinking about being in business, you can go to my Instagram, just Jeff Dudan, JEFF, and you click on the link there. And if you give me your name and phone number, and email, you'll get a free copy of the book delivered immediately to your email, to your inbox, and then we got you. So then you'll get other stuff too. But you can get a free copy of the book, or you can get it on Amazon, I think, for $14.
Well, I've got to ask, given your background both playing sports and coaching sports, what parallels do you see between the world of sports and the world of businesses? Like, what lessons do you carry forth in your business career?
Yeah, so people would question me. okay, my wife would question me on like, okay, you're building this national fast growing restoration franchise, but yet you're taking time to do all this coaching. And it was a lot, but like, do you have time for all of that? I think the lessons in getting a group of young people for 3 to 4 months to build a cohesive team, to understand fundamentally what it's all about, what they're trying to accomplish, is the same as our franchise owners were doing when they would enter their market for the first 90 days. So to me, it was like perfectly aligned. And, one of the tenets is like, once you step across the line, I would tell the kids, you can't recontract. You've made a decision. You can't step across the line and then look at your parents. And by the way, we included all the parents. We weren't one of those companies but like, you can't step across the line and then decide, I'm not gonna block, I'm not gonna tackle, I'm not gonna jump on the football, whatever it is. Like, you've made the decision. So now that the decision's made, then now it's just a matter of like focusing on how to get 1% better and how to, what do you need to learn to have success and to fill your role inside of this. So I think communicating to small groups of people, making sure that there's absolute clarity on what's expected and what success looks like and what's in it for them. It's the same. It is, all of that communication is the same. Now, as you go up in athletics, right, the margin for error gets smaller and smaller. And the last 10% of excellence takes 500% more effort. So when think about NFL players, or we just watch the Olympics. I can walk on a balance beam. And if I practice once a week, I could probably look even better, But if you want to, every level you go up, it's probably 2 more hours of practice a day. I mean, how many hours these people put in the pool? Yeah. So if, and I tell that to them, I said, look, and also people think too small. So on the first day of training, I'm like, what's the difference between you and Elon Musk? We're bags of cells. Well, he's got certain things where he doesn't have self-limiting beliefs. So it just makes perfect sense that we're going to run out of resources on this planet, and that we're going to have to get off it one day, and Mars is the only real option there, and we need a certain amount of tonnage to get there. So to do that, we're going to have to launch rockets every hour. That was the problem he set out to solve. So you do a regression analysis and you solve it backwards. So what I challenge people to do is, I said, okay, you've set your business plan for the year, but it's got self-limiting beliefs all over it. Gun to your head right now, somebody's going to push your kids off a cliff. You have to build a business twice as big in half the time. What would you do? And all of a sudden, the ideas start popping. They know they can build it in twice as big in half the time, but they're hedging their bet. So the higher you want to go, if you want to be in top 5 or top 10% of one of our networks, like you're like that valedictorian student that's studying a couple hours a night. You're not going out on Fridays. Anytime there's a group project, you take lead because you don't want those people to screw up your grades. It's the same in business, right? They have higher accountability, they have higher intensity, they have higher in focus, and they remove latency from their business between the time they know something needs to happen and an action that's taken or a decision that's made to fix it or a conversation that's had. And the other thing is many of them don't understand that the less they do, the better. So I'm telling you that you got to do all these things, but actually the less they actually do themselves, because every business has $1 per head. I was in a marketing mastermind, and these guys, there's a $35 million HVAC contractor, and I know what the numbers are in that business. I said, well, you have 70 trucks, 35 helpers, this, that. He goes, that's exactly what we have. And I'm like, yeah, because you're $35 million. So every business has a X per Y. And so they need to, there's going to be people that they pay by the hour. There's going to be people that make commission. But leaders get paid by the conversation. And the number of conversations they have and who they have them with will be more contributing to the velocity of their business than almost anything else. So, because you've got to have, 10 groups of subcontractors and 10 employees and this many customers and this many vendors. And so the more people that you can get aligned with what you're trying to do, the bigger your business is going to be. So on one hand, all businesses start in a scrum, and they have to get in there. You have to give away what you know the best. So the first 3 to 6 months, you better know every aspect of the business. I bet you know where every screw is and every laser printer, filament sizes and all of that stuff in these drones. But then if you want to grow that'd be great, but then you could make 2 drones a year, right? So now it's like, I know it, so I know what good looks like, so I can give that hat away and I can give that hat away. So if we do our job, I guess if I was going to sum it up, we help our franchise owners go faster through those transitional steps to learn all this stuff. The last 3 franchise brands I've grown, we were bigger in 15 months than I was in 15 years with my first one, because we knew what to do and we just didn't hesitate. And we took all of that hemming and hawing and down the wrong hallway and back out of it. So if we can help a franchise owner get somewhere in 3 years that would have taken them 13 years with their business trying to figure it all out on their own, then I think we've done a good job.
There's so many gold nuggets in that response. I think when I reflect over my athletics days, and I think about the people that went on to play professionally versus those that, never were more than a college athlete and stayed at that amateur level, there was this consistency of excellence, right? Like the amateur level, a lot of people, they could still be great. They're capable of these unbelievable plays and they were very talented. But that consistency, showing up every day and in each moment, performing at that high level, I think that's also what separates businesses, the ones that are really committed to being exceptional in every single facet and doing that every day, day in and day out. And then you start to see that compounding value just week over week, month over month.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, compound interest.
Yeah.
It's in everything.
Yeah.
It is. So I've got to ask, because you said you're a voracious reader, you've written books, and I had the pleasure to look at your library at Homefront Brands.
Oh, are you going to ask me what I'm reading now?
And I won't, but I will ask, what is your most recommended book and why?
Oh, wow. I really like Principles by Ray Dalio. It's a bit of a big book, but you can skip around in it. There's a lot there. I'm recommending this one a lot. It's by Dan Sullivan. It's called Who Not How. Okay. Stan's the founder of Strategic Coach. He's like 80 years old. It's one of the most prolific executive coaching businesses in the world. So Who Not How, I'm recommending quite a bit right now. Of course, I always recommend Discernment. I'm digging into Mastery right now by, Robert Greene, I think. Yeah. But what else do I give out? Everything's a compilation. There's very few new things out there. So whether it's a blue ocean strategy we use to turn strategy in our business, I don't know. I think I'll go with those. Those Who Not How is what I'm recommending right now. I used to give out Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell to all of our franchise owners at just whatever. Yeah. But it seems like I go through phases, It's like I'm interested in this now, so then that seems to be what I'm thinking about. Yeah. But the reason we keep the library that you saw, I have libraries, we have a couple in the office, I've got them, there's just books everywhere, is because anytime that I get faced with a problem and, I want to think independently about the solution, I just kind of start going back over my library and being like, oh yes, there's something in predictably irrational here. There's something in the 5 dysfunctions of a team here. All of these things are timeless, but we're human, so we forget. Yeah. And then and the good news is again, I've read all these books, but I can't keep them in RAM.
Yeah.
So I keep them in eyesight. And then when there's something going on in the business, I go there and I'll pull it out. And by the way, it's still highlighted, so I don't have to read it. I just go right back to what I highlighted 12 years ago and be like, okay, this is, and just because it's not a new book and it's not new to me, it's probably going to be new thinking to the people that I'm working with.
100%.
So then I just, I'll order 3 or 4 copies and I'll say, look, you should read this. So
I think there's this beautiful truth about books too. When you come back and revisit them, when you read a book for the first time, you're reading it from your current life set and experiences. Yeah. When you come back 5 years later, you have this new body of problems I faced and overcome and things you can relate to. And all of a sudden you can read that same exact page and the insights and takeaways can be so much more expanded than they were on the initial read. So I'm a big fan of keeping a library and revisiting the best books, because I think sometimes people obsess over how many books am I reading, but the real hallmark of great reading is reading well, not reading in quantity.
Yeah, 100%. You just, if you're skipping over stuff, they labored over that page to make that point.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me feel a lot better. So I'm definitely trying to step up my reading. Actually just started a new book myself. One of my previous mentors spent a lot of time in the military, and he had this uncanny ability of facing what I felt as though this mountainous challenge. And he always just kind of smiled, even keel, figured it out. And I always would be like, man, how do you do that? And he's like, it's always a good day when somebody's not shooting at you. And yeah. I just, hearing that, and he smiled, it hit me so hard, because I was like, wow, I'm stressing out so much about something that is so little, that if I just kind of breathe, reflect on it, the solution just comes.
Yeah.
So with all that said, one of the books that he recommended to me quite some time ago that I actually just picked up was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink.
Yep.
So I'm about 2 chapters into that and loving it. So I'm happy, because I've found that urge to start reading when it's a topic that I can really relate to.
Yeah, that's a great one. There's also this cute little one called Bounce.
Yeah.
And it's like a little fable style, and it talks about like when something is super challenging, mm-hmm. and the example that they use is you're in a group of Marines, and you're going into a town somewhere in faraway land, and somebody starts shooting at you. Well, most people are going to run away. Well, first of all, they're going to scatter and get cover, but then they know that immediately, before the dust even settles, that they're going to be moving towards the target. Mm-hmm. So the question is when something happens to you, do you crush like a Christmas ornament on the ground?
Yeah.
Or do you land on the ground like a bowling ball and not really bounce and just kind of sit below your desk and wait put your head down till it's over? Or are you like a Super Bowl and you just bounce and you're just like on to the next one? And one thing I've learned to do is, as soon as there's a problem, instead of, my old cycle would be to think about all the ways that it's a problem, is just to walk into it.
Yeah.
And rush to conflict. And if you're going to rush to conflict, which you have to, there's another quote that says, the person who can most accurately describe reality without laying blame shall emerge the leader. Mm. So if you're going to rush to conflict, I don't want to say, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do this? And you're so this and you're so that and this again and whatever. You walk in it and you just say, okay, so what we're trying to accomplish is this. And we have this system set up, and you just start unpacking it in an objective, logical way without laying blame. And now if it's the same problem over and over again, and it happens to be a person problem, then that person probably needs to go. But the reality of it is what looks like lack of effort, what looks like disobedience or whatever, is often a lack of clarity.
Yeah.
When people are unclear, they either do nothing, they make something up, or they do it really slow until they see if it breaks, or somebody tells them to stop or whatever, right? So, and if they're unclear about what to do, whose fault is that? Mm-hmm. It's probably ours. Yeah. So I understand that every problem across Homefront Brands at the franchisee level and is in some way related to something. It's something that I didn't make sure was clear enough. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when you take ownership of that, then it gets like, I don't even have to worry about who to blame. Yeah. I don't have to waste any calories on who's wrong, whose fault it was, and who to blame. It's interesting. I'd like to get your opinion on books. Mm-hmm. Are books going to be a thing?
I honestly don't know. And I grew up probably pretty similarly, and I just tore through books. I'm like, I can go and take somebody's decades worth of experience and in the span of a couple hours digest it. Yeah. And to me, like, I just with bright eyes would tear into every book I possibly could. And now I found, like, as I've grown up, become a little bit more time poor, running a startup, new dad, all those good things. If there's a really good book I want to read, the first thing I do is I try to go and see if that author has a TED Talk or recently was on a podcast. Because then I find, like, in the course of 15 to 30 minutes at 2x speed, I can take away all the same learnings on my drive in and out of work than what I would usually read in like 250 pages of a book. And there's this weird psychology around books where authors feel like they have to get to this critical mass of page numbers, because if it's at Barnes and Noble and somebody's going to pay $20 for a book, they're not going to pay for the 20-page book. But it's like, if I can derive the same value from 20 pages versus 200, I would rather have the 20-page book. So I feel like the popularity of books will definitely go down, but it hurts my heart to say that.
Yeah, I guess that's the case, but I think, you've got 2 chapters in, you probably have 75% of what's in that book already. First 2, 3, 4 chapters, you're going to have 90% of what's to say there. So I don't feel bad sometimes getting halfway through a book. And if I start to see long re-explanations that kind of just another take on what they said 2 chapters ago, that's when I started like, well, is this the best use of it? And then I'll skim. Yep. And I'll skip and I'll start the next chapter and then I'll start. But if nothing else grabs me in there, then it's probably over. So one of our 2037 goals for Homefront Brands is, we're $5 billion in sales, 2,000 franchisees, create 5,000 millionaires in our home office and in the franchise network. But it's to give 1 million books to children. Wow. And every time I think about that, I say that because there is something to the written. A connection between your hand and the brain with a pen, connection between your eyes and holding a book and stuff like that. But just because I believe that, and I believe it also to be true, and other people have said it, that doesn't mean the books are going to be around. It might be other ways. I mean, we might Neuralink stuff right into us. Just close your eyes and pull your ear, and you're watching, you're watching a movie or something in your head. But So I just, I'm continuing to say, because we're partnered with Ben and Candy Carson. We're building reading rooms in schools right now. It's full of books for children, and we're finding ways and finding partnerships to be able to get books into the hands. And I do care what they are, but I care more about people having access to a variety of different books than I'm going to demand what they read or whatever. But I just wonder if that's a little tone deaf, where we are right now.
So to add on to that, I think that's a great point. My daughter's 12. And one of the things that I noticed with my daughter is when she got to the point where she could read a book herself, it was like a whole new world open for her. And it was a large period of time between when she would read in mass quantity to then it started to shift to iPads and electronic devices. So just to go back on what you said, that's huge that you're able to do it, because I still think in that small window at early education that, being able to read books isn't lost. I think as people progress and they get inundated with day-to-day tasks and looking for efficiencies, that's where a lot of the tech picks up. But I still think that book segment's always going to be there.
I think if nothing else, when you have a physical book in your hands, it's a lot harder for something to compete for your attention.
Yeah.
If I'm reading on my phone because I've got the app with the book, I've got messages coming in. I've got, Tom Brady, unretired. What?
Yeah.
And I'm clicking on that again.
Right.
And so it's there's always going to be distractions with the electronics. So we'll see. I think we're gonna stay the course, but we could always change that to something if there's a better way to educate and help young people open their minds and be curious.
Yeah. So, Jeff, as we start to wind down, one of the things you said that I find really inspirational is you want to create 5,000 millionaires. Sure. So if I'm one of the listeners of this podcast and I dream of being one of those 5,000 millionaires, you shared a lot of wisdom. But if you had Jeff's billboard with one piece of wisdom you'd want to share for that audience, what would that billboard say?
If it is to be, it's up to me. I will steal from Dr. Carson, who said, nobody has more to do with what happens to you than you. Wow. You got to look. You can blame your spouse. You can blame your kids. You can blame traffic. You can blame everything for keeping you from what you want to do. But at the end of the day, if you're up to something and going somewhere, people are going to tolerate you at a minimum, support you at a maximum, and Stupid thing I read this year, I read, on my phone, a meme, was, 18 minutes a day is 100 hours a year. Yeah. And you could learn violin in 100 hours a year. You could, there's, how many things can you do in 100, what can you get mastery of in 100 focused hours? You can probably get halfway up the belt chart in jiu-jitsu. There's so many things you could do in 100 focused, dedicated hours. And how many times today did I burn 18 minutes? Yeah. Like over and over and over and over again. So at the end of the day, like we end up exactly where we're meant to end up by the decisions that we make and the actions that we take.
I couldn't agree more. Something we talk about frequently at Lucid is we draw this imaginary line. And often in the external world, we find people get trapped below the line where they believe the world is happening, to them, and things feel out of their control, and they're trapped in this place of scarcity, and it's overwhelming, and there's nothing I can do. And that's a really frustrating place to be. And where we always try to focus is how can we live above the line and live in this place where we believe, hey, the world happens for me and by me. And there are things I can do to positively affect my situation and pursue the outcome I want. Like, sure, I might have had traffic today, but like, how can I still overcome that? Do I leave earlier? Do I plan my day differently? Like, there's so many micro decisions that can really create positive outcomes when we're really willing to take that hard look in the mirror and realize I'm actually in control of a lot of things in my life.
We are.
Yeah.
But we're creatures of habit, and our will is an inexhaustible resource. Yep. So the moment we wake up in the morning, we start burning our battery, and our brain wants to put us in a pattern. Yeah. So, and I'm telling you, you guys are young guys. I'm a little older. The older you get, a battery gets that Tesla memory. Like I've charged it all the way my entire life, but now it only goes up to like 79%. So I have to be more critical about what I spend my time, because your battery starts burning down right away. And but I agree with you 100%. You can, you have to resist the urge to live in a sea of sameness.
Yeah. Well, this was truly, an excellent opportunity, Jeff. I'm so glad you were able to come down here and share so much knowledge with us. One of the things in every conversation I had in meeting with you, all the conversations I've had and interactions I've had with the Homefront Brands team, your franchisees, one of the things that I saw as common is just that drive to be successful. I envy you in a lot of ways from the hard work that you put in. Everybody tends to look at what people have at that moment. The comment that I have a lot of dislike for is, it must be nice, or that must be nice. And nobody knows the work that was put in to achieve whatever that goal was, or that possession that they see. And just you sharing that story with us about how much work you put in, coming from humble beginnings, throughout college, I personally find that, very inspiring, and I hope a lot of our listeners do as well. So I thank you for sharing all that with us.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm very excited about this partnership. You guys have built an incredible company. I feel the same way every time we you get into these partnerships, these vendor relationships, and this one has been easy, and the good ones are, because people look at things the same way. We're very interested in your success and helping you be successful, and I know that our partnership with you will certainly help us do the same. So thank you for having me today.
Yeah, we feel the same way. We always say that the best partnerships are where the math doesn't make a lot of sense, but 1 + 1 = 3, and we're just excited to be working together and pursuing that vision of creating 5,000 millionaires together through this relationship.
Absolutely.
100%. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.